Hello there my RPG lovers and welcome to another video. In 1985, one of the most influential role-playing games ever got its fourth installment in the series. Almost all RPGs before Ultima 4 were based around killing monsters, looting stuff and saving the world from the ultimate evil. Ultima 4 provided an entirely different experience. While you could still kill monsters and explore dungeons, the main goal of this game was to increase your 8 different virtues by various actions you could do in the game. The gameplay was open-ended and the world in an RPG never felt so alive before. Even though AI was still really simplistic, Ultima 4 had unique mechanics that would later define this genre of games. For example, most enemies would start fleeing from a fight when their health gets low, and if you killed them, that would count as dishonorable. You could give gold to beggars and they would usually tell you some useful information, merchants will know if you try to buy goods with stolen gold, and so on. The fact that all of this was possible in a game from 1985 is just mind-blowing. Ultima 4 was ahead of its time and a huge leap for this genre of games. This RPG series continued to push the genre forward. Ultima 7 The Black Gate featured full NPC day and night schedule, the feature that became one of the most important things for creating realism and believable in-game worlds. With the combination of AI path finding and scripting, NPCs would perform various actions depending on the time of day. For example, farmers would gather eggs from chickens and milk cows, blacksmiths would eat breakfast in the morning, then go to work and craft items using items around them, which was really impressive. This was undoubtedly a great AI advancement, but since all of that was happening in the background of the game, it didn't receive enough attention. The next Ultima game in the series was even more revolutionary, but for different reasons. Ultima Underworld The Stygian Abyss was probably the first role-playing game to feature first-person action in a 3D environment. The reason why I'm mentioning this game has almost nothing to do with the AI, because it's pretty simplistic. But it's a really important game that didn't get enough credit. Playing an RPG never felt so immersive before. For the first time ever, you feel like you're actually there because you control your character from the first person. This fact alone was a big enough reason to try and improve the AI of non-playable characters in future RPGs. If the world space suddenly looks so real, you would expect that people you meet in the world would actually act like human beings. Well, at least those who are actually human. Anyway, the influence of Ultima Underworld and Ultima games in general was huge. Role-playing games continued to improve and expand in the 1990s, but NPC's AI didn't have some notable improvements. And this isn't surprising because the worlds in those games started to get insanely big, especially with the arrival of Elder Scrolls Arena. It would be crazy to expect that all NPCs in such a massive world would have day and night schedules or some similar actions that would mimic the real human behavior. As we got closer to the end of 1990s, 3D RPGs became smaller in size in favor of more handcrafted worlds. Crowded menus that would cover half of your screen were gone, and instead of that you would get to experience a full 3D world with little to no distractions on the screen. Needless to say that this by itself was really impressive at the time, but in order to create a believable world, you need much more than good visuals. Gothic came out in 2001, and it seems like this RPG took some inspiration from Ultima series. Even though it didn't age so well, mostly because of the inconvenient controls and outdated graphics, everything else in the game is really impressive, even by today's standards. Since we're here to talk about AI, this is the game that took it to another level when it comes to 3D RPGs. Gothic is considered to be one of the best open-world action RPGs, and for a good reason. Immersive world and the amazing atmosphere are just a couple of aspects that were heavily praised by almost everyone who played the game. The AI design should definitely get the most credit for this. If NPCs in Gothic didn't behave with a certain dose of realism, this prison-like setting just wouldn't work. Small details are always important if you want to create a believable world, and Gothic certainly has a lot of them. Most of those little details are related to AI, like standing in the way of someone,
let me pass,
drawing your weapon,
put the weapon down,
entering someone's house,
get out of here!
Getting knocked out and robbed,
I'd rather kill you, but the ore's not bad either.
Receiving warning signs from animals before they attack, bigger animals eating smaller animals, just to name a few. Gothic is probably the first full 3D game with NPC schedules. NPCs will go to work in the morning, travel between areas, talk to each other, gather around at night and go to sleep. The way that NPCs respond to your actions can be described as logical, for the most part. And you better believe the rules that these people live by, otherwise you can learn it the hard way. Rather than just creating an illusion of the real world, this game went an extra mile to actually convince you that this is a real place. Most of the modern games don't care that much about this stuff anymore, which is a shame. Everyone likes good graphics, but bad AI design is something that can easily break the immersion, no matter how good the game looks. The developer of this game, Piranha Bytes, continued to make small improvements to their AI system with each game. However, the next big improvement on this field of game design was not done by the same studio. Oblivion was the first Elder Scrolls game that focused a lot on AI design. This feature was even used as the part of the marketing campaign. Pretty much everyone heard about Radiant AI. Morrowind was a great RPG, but the AI behavior was really simplistic. It was years behind AI from Gothic 1 and Gothic 2, but Bethesda really wanted to change this with their next Elder Scrolls game. Oblivion's AI was possibly too ambitious for its own good, and that's the reason why it became a meme.
Farewell.
But the absence of individual scripting for each character is by itself really impressive in a world of this size. What's perhaps even more impressive is the dynamic reaction from NPCs in certain situations. For example, if the NPC is supposed to eat something at 10 AM, but his inventory is empty, he will try to acquire food in different ways. Some NPCs will try to steal, and others will just buy food from the vendors. This depends on their responsibility status that the player can't actually see. Scenarios like this will keep happening in the world, with or without players' involvement. And I think that this aspect of Radiant AI makes the world feel alive, even though it can be annoying and silly sometimes. What's really interesting about this, the whole Radiant AI system that we got to see in Oblivion was actually a light version of the original system. Early in the game development, the AI would basically make the game unplayable at some point. They would buy all the stock from the shops, skooma addicts would kill skooma dealers to get their fix, guards would hunt for food, then other guards would arrest them for skipping work, etc. Even though this sounds chaotic, I think it would be really fun to experience something like this. The AI in Skyrim got scaled back even more, but it wouldn't be fair to not mention some of the improvements they made on this field. They were not huge by any means, but like I already mentioned in the video, small details matter a lot. Just the fact that guards have so many different lines of dialogue to react to the player is amazing. They would complement your choice of equipment, react to your skill level, to your race, witness events, and so on. It can be annoying to hear some of the lines over and over again, but if this really annoys you, you can fix it with a simple mod. There are many more examples of similar AI behavior in Skyrim. For example, if some vendors die, they get replaced with another NPC. If you have a bounty on your head, you get chased by the guards from that particular hold where you committed the crime, which is logical. Everything I mentioned here definitely helps in building an immersive and believable world. And even though Skyrim scaled back the core of this system, it had enough small improvements on this field that shouldn't get overlooked.
Let me guess. Someone stole your sweet roll.
I mentioned realism and believable worlds quite a lot in this video, and the next game we're going to talk about is basically built on this premise. Kingdom Come Deliverance is a really special game. It's unlike any other RPG that came out recently because it focuses a lot on realism. It definitely takes some time to getting used to its rules, and it's not for impatient gamers. Even though it targets a specific audience, it managed to create a strong fan base shortly after it released. It's a game that makes you learn most of its mechanics step by step, and it tries to simulate a true medieval life with real places and characters that actually existed. It goes without saying that this wouldn't be possible without a decent AI system. It's nothing groundbreaking, but it has some nice features worth mentioning. It has a day and night NPC schedule, as you would expect I guess. If you commit a crime, NPCs will try to report you, guards will occasionally search your inventory for stolen goods, people will notice if your character is dirty, and so on. I'm gonna sound like a broken record, but yeah, small details. The reason why all of this is so impactful in Kingdom Come Deliverance is because everything in the game is designed to feel real. So even though the AI is nothing that we haven't seen so far, it feels different when the game itself is focused on realism. We are still waiting for some new RPG to make some big improvements when it comes to AI. Cyberpunk 2077 and Mount & Blade Bannerlord definitely have the potential to do so, but that's yet to be seen. And even though this video was specifically about RPGs, I have to mention a couple of newer games from different genres that had a great AI design. Zelda Breath of the Wild is definitely worth mentioning. The most impressive thing when it comes to AI in this game is NPC awareness in fights. The AI will try to adapt in certain situations and use their environment to their advantage. Then we have the AI from The Last of Us, specifically Ellie's AI, which was amazing. The Last of Us was actually delayed for 5 months because the director of this game decided to overwrite the entire companion AI from scratch. Imagine how cool it would be to see a similar AI behavior in a huge RPG full of NPCs. And this is exactly why I wanted to specifically focus on this genre of games, because it's so hard to put everything together in a big world with lots of player freedom and expect it to work properly. And that would be all for this episode of RPG Talks. I hope you enjoyed this story about AI advancements in RPGs over the years, and I would like to hear your thoughts about this topic. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to press the thumbs up button and subscribe for more content. Click on the bell icon so you don't miss any future videos. Special thanks to my Patreons for supporting this channel in the long run. Patreon is definitely the best place if you want to support my work, so consider checking those links in the description. And I'll see you in the next one.